So, knowing thy niche and your persona. So, here's what we're going to cover in this module: transitioning from trunk to branch and understanding where you sit in the market, how to develop your branches and why you can only have one trunk, how to become the rising phoenix of your sub niche and dominate, self awareness, vulnerability, and building your entourage, and how to mold thy persona. So, transitioning from the tree to branch. Okay, this is how to pick your niche and your sub niche. Your niche is the trunk. Now, guys, we're actually going to use this trunk branch analogy just to kind of depict things. Now, as I said, your niche is the trunk. This is just really the solid foundation. This is everything, this is the thing that sprouts into everything else that you talk about, that you sell, that you help people with, that you promote affiliate offers for, whatever. As we go along this path to building a six-figure personal brand, all the tools that you utilize. Now, this is what a tree with two trunks looks like. It's actually quite funny. Now, the issue with having two trunks is they actually compete for the same sunlight. Okay, they're in very, very close proximity to each other. Now, you can see them both sprouting into different directions. The first issue with this is, energy is being expended into two different directions, right? It's not focused and channeled in one direction. Number two is these two different trunks are actually competing against each other, even though they have the same roots. And they're causing issues for each other. They're ultimately causing their own demise. Now, Confucius once said, and this is one of my favorite quotes, "The man who chases two rabbits catches neither." And I truly believe in that. So, picking one trunk. Now, as I said, trunk is really just an analogy for your niche. You need to pick a niche, and this is your trunk. This is your solid foundation and a place to grow from. Now, you may only have one trunk, one foundation. Otherwise, you will never reach market resonance. You'll be your own worst enemy, and you'll be paid as someone who gives just general advice. Okay? So you really need to just have one niche that you focus on. Now, you can have different branches, and these are sub niches, which we'll get into. So for me, this trunk was business and entrepreneurship. This is my base and foundation. Everything I do and say usually leads back to this trunk. If I'm telling some sort of story or parable, if I'm even talking about spirituality or fitness or your social circle, usually it just leads back into one thing, which is entrepreneurship. Now, entrepreneurship is a very, very large trunk. It's a big niche, and that's why I have these branches, these sub niches, which, as I said, we will get into. Now, I've seen people try and try and have business and fitness at the same time as their niche. And I've seen people try to pull off business and fitness, and it's never quite worked. You have to be known for one large market, and when you start, and then niche down further. Okay, you are really going to ostracize your audience and your potential customer base if at the same time that you're talking about entrepreneurship and you're focusing on that, you're also talking about business in a very serious manner. Okay, you can have bleed over, and you can have these as sort of your branches and your sub niches that you kind of talk about and go into. But you're really going to build up a loyal following audience when they start to kind of know what to expect from you. When people go onto your YouTube or your Instagram or come into one of your products or your coaching, people want to kind of know what to expect. They don't want to be surprised. So you'll actually be going through a niche and sub niche as well as mold thy persona worksheet in order to really drill down on this. So, as I said, your sub niches, which I like to call the branches, the trunk and the branches. So picking your branches, this is where you really drill down and you find where you can really shake up a market and dominate. This is where you rise like the phoenix and shake up your sub niche. Okay. Now you'll see in just a little bit why it's so hard to compete for trunk space, for general niche space. Whereas if you really just carve your own spot into your sub niche, you're gonna have a lot less competition in a niche that's already been proven. So this is where most personal brands go wrong. They just recycle BS from other people and never truly become an expert in anything. They fit in with the rest of the pack. Okay, so someone tries to come into a niche, build a personal brand, and it's just the same regurgitated bullshit. And to an extent, that works. But look, if you really, really want to differentiate yourself, and I'm not saying you need to extremely differentiate yourself, and that's why I've told you here to focus on your trunk first, which is your niche, an established niche that quite clearly works. Entrepreneurship works, fitness works, fashion works, beauty works, travel works. Okay, all of these things quite clearly work, and you can even slim that trunk down, slim that overall niche down to, for example, your main niche can be videography, and then your sub niche can be specifically how to color grade and how to use LUTs and how to kind of differentiate between different picture profiles on cameras. That's just an example. Okay. So as I said, really where most personal brands go wrong is they try to compete with the top dogs by going straight for an overall niche, like as I said, content creation, when really they should be carving their own sort of path, and they're still going to have competition, but a lot less of it. Now, as I said, we start off by picking a trunk, picking a solid foundation and a niche that has proven itself, has the capacity to cause life-changing impact for your customers while still being extremely profitable. Now, the tree is also a symbol for competition. So let's take a closer look. You see at the bottom, which is the trunk, it's dense. There's heavy competition. If you try to slot yourself into that spot, as I said, you're going to get killed. Okay? And look, don't get me wrong. If you try to build a fitness channel or an entrepreneurship channel or a channel about health and well-being, or a channel about addiction, or or rather than a channel, I mean a personal brand around accounting. These are hard, these are dense. There's a lot of competition in here, and you can succeed, and you probably would succeed if you still got into those. But what I'm saying is, why not just carve out a path for yourself and become known within a sub niche? Really dominate that, and then you can go further down the tree. Most people go up the tree. They start off with just doing a general, having some sort of general personal brand, and then slimming down and eventually becoming, the top dog, the real expert in a certain sub niche. I'm saying, why don't we just start off in the sub niche and then work our way down as we get more and more respect, make more money, just get build a lot more rapport with our audience. Then we can start to go down and really compete with the top dogs in the larger, in the larger part of this tree, the larger part of the market. Okay. Now, as I said, if you go to the top, it's thin. You're competing with very few people or virtually zero people at times. So that's a good place to start. So I saw this with 1.0 of the program. The issue is people didn't find their sub niche, so they tried to compete with me. They tried to compete with the leading e-commerce experts, the leading trauma experts, the leading content experts. I saw a lot of people, come into 1.0 of the program and try to, directly compete with me in my, in the niches the niches that I was dominating and I was really focusing on. That's going to be tough. If you're just coming into the fitness space and just fitness, there's a bunch of other people in that space that have done it for years and years and years and spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on advertising and marketing and stuff like that. It's going to be hard to compete with them. So why would you? Why don't you just start in your sub niche? You never really have to worry about fierce competition. Build a name for yourself and then work your way down the market. Okay? So right now I want you to actually download and pull up the niche and your sub niche worksheet, and I'll show you what this looks like. This is available in Pages and Words. So this is what it looks like. So your trunk, what I want you to do is I want you to actually go ahead and explain it here. All right, so explain your niche. So to give you an example for me, or just to give an example generally, let's just say your overall niche is health and wellness, or mental well-being and spirituality. Okay, now why is this trunk important to you? I really want you just to explain it and go into detail and just kind of remind yourself why you got into it in the first place and why you're passionate about it. Okay, so, for someone who's in health and spirituality, maybe, an example might be, I was struggling from anxiety. I could barely even leave the house, and I had zero understanding of who I was as a person. And spirituality and understanding, myself, led to a life that I never would have imagined, as an example. So that is your trunk. That is your overall niche. Now your branches, for someone in health and wellness, a possible sub niche for them might even be pornography addiction, or maybe pornography addiction or social media addiction. A lot of people out there, quite frankly, are just so addicted to their devices and social media. Then maybe that might be something, as a member in this course or a course student or one of you guys is actually, that might actually be an experience that you've had. Okay, so that's an example. So maybe number one possible sub niches is phone addiction. The next could be meditation, and the next could be maybe something else. Okay, these are your sub niches. These are sort of subtopics that you can talk about. Now, here is actually where we really drill down and we try and make it very clear what's a good one to focus on to begin with. So what branch isn't being talked about enough? Out of 10, I want you to rate it. So from the 3 sub niches, and guys, there's 3 things that you know enough about. We're really going to get into this later down the line, the paradox of the expert or the guru or whatever you like to call it, and how most of the time that's a very inaccurate depiction of who they are as a person. So we'll get into that further down the line. But what are 3 branches and what are 3 things where you have some knowledge of? Okay. And first thing I want you to do is, out of 10, rate which branch isn't being talked about enough. So for example, maybe, what the example I gave before, meditation. Plenty of people talk about meditation, but not enough people are talking about phone addiction and how to actually recover from the fact that, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, they are literally rewiring our brains. If you guys have ever read a book called The Shallows, I forget who it's by, The Shallows. Yeah, eludes my mind right now, but The Shallows, amazing book about that. So, that might be an example of a 10 out of 10, phone addiction. The next meditation might be a 6 out of 10. And the next, you get the point. What branch are you most skilled at or have the most knowledge about at your current time? So for example, maybe phone addiction, that might be a 3 or 4 out of 10 because you've never actually studied it or come to understand, the rewiring that goes on in your brain after using all of these devices. Whereas meditation, maybe you've been studying meditation for 2 years. So on there, you might put, social media addiction 4 out of 10, whereas meditation 9 out of 10. Now, the next thing is, what branch could have the biggest impact on your customers' lives? Okay, so what's the thing that's really going to bring the biggest impact for them? And, whatever's going to bring the biggest impact on your customers' lives, that's going to come back to you. Okay, really with this program, we're playing the long game and we're building a real business that's going to build generational wealth that is not going anywhere and is going to get to a point where, you're going to get customers and repeat customers and referrals coming to you again and again and again. So the only way you can do that is when you have the biggest possible impact on your customers' lives. So next thing I want you to do is actually tally them up out of 30, and that should give you a clear sort of depiction as to what sub niche you should focus on first. You can mix and integrate all of these because these are sub niches, but this will give you a real understanding of what sub niche you should really focus on first. Okay, so once again, guys, go ahead and fill out that worksheet, and I highly recommend, once you fill out that worksheet, print it if you can. Okay, print it if you can, because just the same thing with the wallpapers. I recommend you print it. Obviously, the wallpapers are intended to be used as wallpapers on your computer to save them as your desktop. That said, I recommend you print the wallpapers. I also recommend you print these worksheets and have them by your bedside or by your desk. This is what the best of the best have done. You have intentionally come into this program. You've spent money on this, And if you want to get incredible, if you want to get a mind-boggling return on investment on this program, you have to do things like this. Okay, so don't let this just kind of go over the top of your head. So the next thing is you want to be niche, but not too niche. So let's take a look at mine as an example. So this is actually a guy called Kinobody. Now his main niche is fitness. Now his branches are intermittent fasting. He's a big proponent of intermittent fasting and what it can do for people. The next thing is low frequency training. And the next thing is macro tracking over food restrictions. Okay, so he came into the fitness space and he really shook it up because, a lot of people in the fitness space were saying, you got to eat 12 meals a day and train, 2 times a day, 6 days a week. And he just came in and although he was coming into, what is already a very big trunk or a very competitive trunk, which was fitness, he came in, and because he had these different branches that really separated himself, it resonated with the market like crazy. Okay, and as I said, those branches for him were things like intermittent fasting. He was a big proponent of that. Actually, low frequency training, but low frequency, really high intensity, and macro tracking over food restriction. Those are things that really resonated with the market, and I would say one of the big reasons that he grew so quickly. Now, really cool example is I've been helping my girlfriend grow her personal brand, and she's coming into entrepreneurship. She's done she's done sales for a long time, consulting for a long time, and her trunk is entrepreneurship. Okay, now her branches, the thing that really separates herself is, first of all, social media marketing. Okay, that's sort of, I guess, a larger branch or a larger sub niche, but she's in the space of social media marketing. Her focus is on paving a new path for female entrepreneurs. She's seen it with female entrepreneurs where they're treated differently, and she's learned a lot about that working in both a corporate environment and in an entrepreneurial environment, and how to actually deal with that and manage that. And then lastly, focus on getting high ticket leads through LinkedIn within SMMA, right? So she's very good at actually using LinkedIn to bring in high ticket leads. Okay, so those are her branches. Those are the things that really separate her, or differentiate herself from the rest of the market, and kind of just make it easy for her to grow. So let's hop inside Facebook audience targeting and take a closer look. And I just want to use the Facebook audience targeting just to give you a depiction of what actually happens. So right now we have entrepreneurship, as you can see. All 18 to 65 entrepreneurship, and we have an audience of 310 million people who are interested in entrepreneurship worldwide. Now 310 million, it's going to be too hard to go deep with our audience, build a lot of rapport, and really just like carve out our own space. Now that said, imagine now we go ahead and we go, look, we're primarily going to target women, okay, and we're also, and by the way, guys, this is just this is really just just to make the point that, when you niche down, your audience is going to slim down, but it's actually going to be good for you, right? Now we slim down the age targeting. We know that we resonate with maybe a younger market. Now we can go in and we can say social media marketing. That is something that we're really going to come into, especially for females. This is an example for my girlfriend, for example, where she can come in and rather than targeting all entrepreneurship, targeting that big trunk, and targeting those 310 million, she can come in and go, no, I'm going to focus primarily on women, still applicable for men, but I'm going to focus primarily on women, and I'm going to try to resonate with a female market and primarily a younger market that, once again, is struggling because there's not many, young female entrepreneurs out there kind of putting themselves out there. And I'm going to focus specifically on social media marketing. And she's gone even further and focused on how to get high ticket leads using LinkedIn for social media marketing. Okay, so this is an example, and this kind of shows you within Facebook Ads Manager, just how you can really slim down your audience. And this is actually a good thing. A lot of people think that you should be targeting the entire market, and the more people I target, the more money I'll make. Well, no, because the more people you target, the more general you are. Okay, and the more general you are, I've seen it with people where if you're just a entrepreneurship, if you just help entrepreneurs, what does that mean? There's no clear, definitive outcome for your potential customers or clients. Okay, so that's just an example within Ads Manager of what actually happens. So your sub niche can and will change over time, just as long as your trunk stays the same. Okay, so it's okay for you, to come into the space of accounting, right? To come into the space of accounting, and then your sub niche is you help specifically accountants. If you help specifically accountants, build an online business or take everything online, or help accountants build a remote accounting business, which means they don't need a physical office or location. You could do that, and then 2 years later go, actually, you know what? I think in order to scale as an accountant, you actually do need offices, and you can make that pivot within your sub niche and your methodology. And in the same way, Kinobody, he might actually come out in a year and go, shit, you know what? I was wrong. It is actually better just to train 5-6 times a week. That's okay, because he hasn't changed his trunk, which is fitness. Okay, and people most of the time, if you adopt your methodology, your customers will actually adopt their methodology to whatever you recommend and whatever you see fit. So by now you should have gone through the niche and sub-niche worksheet in order to find what niche you want to focus on and how to make sure you have limited competition in this field. How to rise like the phoenix by expertly positioning your branches so you come into highly profitable and impactful niche, but with minimal competition ahead of you. Understand that your branches can be broken and regrown later down the line as you evolve and step into new territory. Now, 6,650 species, endless variations. Now, it's time to pick your variations and make it your own. So there are actually over 60,065 species of trees in the world. So we've molded your tree. It's created your branches, but now it's time to pick your variations and what species it is. So imagine a tree. We figure out what your trunk is. We've figured out what your branches are. Okay, but the tree could be a different species. It could be a different color. It could grow in different ways. It could look different. There's so many different variations. So what I want to do in this next phase, that first phase was very practical, which was picking your niche and your sub niche and deciding where you fit into the market. So in this next phase, we're actually going to build your character, your interests, where you're positioned in the marketplace, and your story. So I actually call this molding thy persona. Okay, so this is really where we kind of like put a new skin onto your tree. We make it look different, etc., etc. So things to remember. Okay, this is the definition of persona: the aspect of someone's character that is presented to or perceived by others. So one thing I really just want to say here is we're not building out a fake character or being someone we're not. We're aiming to accentuate your characteristics and bring them to life, make you personable and relatable. This is where people get attached to you and you start building, it sounds terrible, but almost a cult following where people are just so bought into you, the way your view of the world, your methodology. People are just so bought into you that it's almost becoming a cult following. Okay? And the self-awareness of thy persona and how you're publicly perceived will be one of your greatest tools moving forward. Having a clear understanding of how the market sees you, okay? And when I say the market, I just mean your audience, okay? Having a very clear understanding of how the market, how your audience, how your potential customers see you really is going to be one of your greatest tools moving forward. So this is a quote by Deepak Chopra, and he says, by becoming self-aware, you gain ownership of reality. In becoming real, you become the master of both inner and outer life. So really, as I said, when you understand, when you have that self-awareness, nothing really comes at you. There's very little that can surprise you. When you understand your persona, what persona you're giving out, how the market resonates with that, and how it understands this. And by the way, these are all concepts we're going to touch on very shortly, a bit further down in the program. When you understand those concepts and you understand how the market sees you, you get complete clarity, right? And you can really bend reality in your favor. So first thing I want to talk about is vulnerability and life experience. So when you first start out, you may not have money or experience, but one thing that there is zero excuse not to have is authenticity. This is the rarest of any of those characteristics. You know, it's funny, plenty of people have money, plenty of people have experience, but when you try to get someone to speak from a place of authenticity and really just be honest about their life experience, what they've done, where they're currently at, most people find it pretty tough. So we like to feel like we belong and that someone understands our pain. This is what vulnerability and being transparent about where you've been, where you're at, and where you're going does for you and your audience. You know, it's funny. The first time I ever was really, really authentic and honest and vulnerable with my audience, I thought I was completely screwed. You know, I remember it was early on into my entrepreneurship, or not early on, but like it was early on to me building my personal brand seriously. And I basically, you know, told my audience about how my marketing agency, I'd literally lost 60% of my revenue, client revenue, in the space of a month. You know, and I thought, shit, if people know this, like, why would they ever trust me? And, you know, the funny thing is it just built even more trust and rapport with my audience. And then the next thing was I started talking about my family and my past experience growing up and some of the really traumatic things that I saw and had to deal with growing up as a child, and having to have the burden of taking care of my mom at 17, you know, taking care of her financially as well as myself financially at 17. Talking about, you know, everything from that to I've talked about drug use publicly and just been authentic and honest about everything. And honesty is one of your biggest traits, and one of the things that really people want to feel as though they belong, and people want to feel as though someone understands them. And when you can be completely authentic and honest, guys, most of the time it's actually worth more to the market than how much money you make or your experience. So as I said, first time talking about my previous mistakes, shortcomings with drug use, partying, you know, some of my shortcomings with my business at different points. I literally thought I'd never have an audience again. I'm like, shit, if they listen to this, I'm done. I'm screwed. Why would anyone ever take my word for anything after this? And it just had the opposite effect. You know, the opposite happened. My audience simply got closer to me and my brand. It's funny, they resonated with me more. They appreciated my honesty. And it was just really important to them that I humanize myself. I think in this market, it's really important to make sure that you're still a human, okay? Because when you go to the market, there's two things you really need. You need them to, first of all, give them an outcome. You need to give them an outcome that is desired. You need to paint a picture of where they could get to. Whether that be, you know, in their entrepreneurial battle, in their fitness, in maybe their relationships. Maybe you help people with their relationships. You know, paint a picture of what their relationship with their boyfriend or their girlfriend could be like after you guys work together. You know, so you really need to show them what can happen. You know, what change can happen in their life. That said, you also need to make sure that you have humanized yourself. You know, because the thing is, anytime, you know, if you see a billionaire, you're just like, for most people, they're just like, I can't resonate with that. Like, I don't think I could ever get there. But if you see a billionaire and he openly talks about his faults and how 37% of days he actually wakes up and he just wants to lay in bed. He doesn't even want to get up and deal with any of this crap. That humanizes him, and you start to actually go, wow, he's really not that much different to me. Okay, so you need both sides of that equation. Next thing is building your entourage. Now, guys, these are smaller concepts. I want you to always keep first things first, which is building up your audience. And we're really going to talk about, you know, what the most important aspects of this journey are in just a bit. But first things first is always your IPAs, your income producing activities. You know, selling your service, refining your service, and then selling your service again. That's really what it comes down to. These are smaller concepts, but one, if you implement, will actually still have a really big effect. So building your entourage. Now, an entourage is a group of people attending or surrounding an important person. That important person is you. You have an entourage in your life, whether you realize it or not. Okay, you have people around you in your sphere, and then you are the circle of that. Okay, and then there's other people in your life, and you're in their entourage, and you just don't really realize it. Now, as I said, this is an advanced technique. So once you've established your personal brand, I recommend you draw in different characters into your life. These are people who form your entourage, and this will be public on your Instagram, your YouTube, your Facebook, whatever, wherever it may be. Okay, people are now no longer attached to only me, but people know my mother. I put my mom on my social media a bunch, and I've done a Q&A with her. People know about my girlfriend, my mentors, my friends, my personal trainer. My personal trainer is always on my Instagram story, so people know him. And people have become attached to not only me, but they've become attached to my entourage. So build your entourage and weave the important people into your personal brand so your audience grows an emotional attachment to not only you, but really just everything that surrounds your life. So why is far more powerful than how. People care a lot more about why than how. So when I tell people that I'm on a mission to reform the education system, they feel as though they're coming on a journey with me and they're drawn into a deeper why. Okay, I talk about this a lot because this, I'm in a place right now with my business, and I think I've foreseen this future for a long time where I know financially I can have everything that I want in this life. I have literally, I'll be honest with you guys, I have zero doubts I'll be a billionaire. But I also understand that really won't bring me much pleasure. That's gonna be very futile. Because here's the thing, there's only so many watches, or so many cars, or so many this thing you can get. That said, you need to get the watches and the cars and the travels and this, get it first and then experience it, and then you come to realize. So really my deeper why is I'm on a mission to reform the education system. As a high school dropout myself, I dropped out of high school because I needed to continue to scale my business and, quite frankly, take care of me and my mom. I really just want to help and enable other entrepreneurs out there. So when I talk about that as my mission, people just feel so drawn in, and they really feel as though they're coming on a journey with me. So people are much more likely to root for your success if you tie it to a deeper meaning. So I show people how my financial success will impact the education system or family rather than what I can buy with it. Okay? So a lot of time, when I talk about money, here's the thing, if you just throw out there, I make a shit ton of cash and stuff, you will get a bit of the market who resonates with that, and they also just want to drive cars and be a pimp and, have something out of the Wolf of Wall Street. You'll have a little bit of the market, but honestly, that's not a good side of the market. You don't really want to pick up that side of the market. Okay? So, as I said, people are much more likely to root for your success if you tie it to a deeper meaning. So what's that deeper meaning? For me, for example, I'm on a mission to reform the education system. I showed you an example with my girlfriend. She's on a mission to really just carve and pave the new path for female entrepreneurs. You don't need to figure this out now. It's something that will come with over time. So as I said, I told my girlfriend she needed to refine her marketing message. We came up with, I want to pave a new path for female entrepreneurs. So people follow her journey for her why now, okay? Do not get caught up with this stuff at the beginning. This is something that sets a really good foundation, but the goal must always remain, the goal always needs to be make money and deliver the best service/product for your customers. That's the main goal when you first start. Then you can sort of start to weave in the entourage and these concepts of why versus how, and really just building your market message. This is stuff that is more advanced level and will help you transcend into just a completely different realm when it comes to your personal brand, your market message, and actually building a business around that. When you first start though, the goal, as I said, needs to remain make money, get leads, and deliver the best product or service for your clients. So guys, it's time to bring it all together. So I want you to download and pull up the Molding Thy Persona worksheet. As I said, it'll be right below this video. So let's go ahead and pull it up. So here it is, Molding Thy Persona. So characteristics, I just want you to list 3 characteristics that you have. So for example, with me, characteristic might be a complete transparency. Sometimes probably not for my own good. Probably sometimes it's better if I just bite my tongue and I'm a lot more vanilla, but I can't help it. There's nothing that's off the table with me, and I'm completely transparent whether I'm winning, losing, in a shit point or in a good point in my life. I'm just like that. I can't help it. You know, so that could be one characteristic for me. The other characteristic for me might be patient or long-term thinking. That might be another thing. Okay, so whatever it is for you. So for you, maybe for example, you might be very empathetic. You know, that's something that I'm not most of the time. I have to really try to be empathetic because most of the time I'm just very black and white. Someone comes to me with an issue and I'm just like, dude, this, and then I don't really register or really come to grips with, you know, maybe some of the emotional challenges behind that issue. You know, so that's something that I struggle with, for example, whereas for some of you guys, you might be very empathetic. So write that down and then just elaborate slightly on what that actually means and you know, the brass tacks of it. You know, what does that mean in a day-to-day sense? Next thing is hobbies outside of Trunk. Okay, so I want you to actually weave in some of your hobbies into your persona and sort of what you put out into the market. So for me, one thing is fashion. You know, people love to ask me about fashion, and music's another thing. People really like my style in fashion and music. And another hobby is, for example, just meditation or fitness. So these are other hobbies outside of the Trunk that people still come to kind of know me for and kind of like separates me. Okay. Next thing is E-Man story. So for example, you know, you might be a Michael or a Sarah or a whatever it may be. Okay, obviously put in your own name, change it up. Put in your story. Just put in three key. What are three key components of your story and your journey that have really been of big impact to you, okay, and really molded who you are today. Just write those three things down, and that'll give you a clearer depiction of your timeline and why your persona and your market message is the way that it's going to be and currently might be. Next thing is your why. As I said, you may not know this in complete transparency, or you may not have a very clear vision of what this is right now, but just fill it out in as much detail as you can. So guys, that is the molding that persona worksheet. Okay, so as I said, let's take a look at mine as an example. I just showed you a couple examples right there. So today's action step is I want you to fill out both worksheets from this module, and I want you to store them in a file entitled Influencer Ignite 2.0. Go ahead and put this into put a folder on your desktop, and all these action steps as well as these, you know, these wallpapers, I recommend you download them. I recommend you print them, as I have said already plenty of times. I'm probably going to be a broken record when it comes to that. I recommend you print them, keep them by your bedside, your desk, but then also keep them on your computer. Okay, so fill both of these worksheets out and store them in a folder entitled Influencer Ignite 2.0. So guys, I hope you enjoy this module, and I will see you in the next one.